Good morning, everybody. I am Ginny Schuster with Ginnypreneur, and I'm just so excited to have you all here on my YouTube channel. I hope that you comment, I hope you like, and I hope you subscribe, because I'm telling you, this guy, Phil, is absolutely amazing. Not only is he a writer, I pulled out his book of naked thinking, which I read and we discussed in one of the prior interviews. I hope you go back and look at it. But he's a speaker and he's got philosophies. I just love talking with him because we talk about everything. But to narrow it down, what we decided to do is we want to get this country back to getting more entrepreneurs, because when you have a purpose, your whole world opens up and there's so much more hope for you. You're all the people that you meet. And that's really what the series is about. It's about, who do you know? If you don't know the right person, contact me and I'll connect you. I just love talking with all sorts of people. So, Phil, being a behavior cognitive therapist, and of course I say it backwards, that's half the fun of this. We're going to talk about businesses and entrepreneurs. So as I said, please like and subscribe so you can hear all of our interviews. The question that I want to talk about today is, what are the kind of things that people are going to face when they get into their own business? And the route I'd like to take it is, you're going to be a boss, which means you're going to be a leader, and that could be scary. Sometimes you start out by yourself and you're not quite sure, but Phil always has some interesting things to think of when it comes to that. So let's dive into it, Phil.
It's an interesting, good morning. It's an interesting question that you pose. I have talked to a lot of entrepreneurs that don't think of themselves as such. They think of themselves as professional people. Doctors. You don't think of a doctor as an entrepreneur, but if you own your own practice, you are. You would be surprised if they don't think of themselves that way. So what they do is they try to offload some of the nuts and bolts of being in business for yourself to other people. So they have office managers and stuff like that. I've known old country doctors whose offices were in old houses, and they just converted it over into an office, believe it or not. And they ran it all. They did it all themselves. So but they were willing to do that. That means they did the hiring, and occasionally they did the firing. And that, if you're going to go into business for yourself and it's just a one you guy and it's just solo kind of a thing, self leadership is going to be critical. However, if you're going to be dealing with employees, the responsibility is yours to make them successful. It's not like, okay, I'm going to hire you. Now it's your job to be successful. No, it's my job to make sure you are. And that means I need to understand what it is you can do, what it is that you currently cannot do, and I can help you to be able to do at some point in the future, how to develop your skill set so that you can do more and better in the future, how to be willing to use motivational tools to keep you on track for improvement. And because what tends to happen for a lot of employees, not everybody, but what happens, and very often anyway, is they become very, very good really early on, and then they kind of slack off because they get comfortable and they're not doing everything they're supposed to do, and they seem to get by not doing it, and nobody says anything about it. And one of the things that you just mentioned there, the question that you have on the table, what are the things you have to think, one of the things you might have to think about, this idea of being more than a manager, but being a leader. And the thing about being, to me anyway, what I see is in leadership, one of the most important things is that you are willing to do what it takes to be the leader. And so, as a matter of fact, for many years, I was asking audiences, what they consider to be the characteristics or traits or behavioral things that qualify somebody in their world as being a great leader in their own personal world. And number one was that they were willing to take up the task of being a leader. That seems to be the number one thing that makes a leader. In previous conversations you and I have had, Jenny, for example, I could say, what's the difference relating to this? What's the difference between a singer and a non-singer? And the answer is singers sing. We all have a voice. We can all sing, some better than others. I know people that, sit around and laugh their heads off, at comedy clubs and whatever. And they're very funny, but they don't get on stage in front of a microphone on open mic night. But the person that gets up on stage on open mic night and practices and does, that's the person that becomes the comedian. So singers sing, non-singers don't sing. Real leaders, it's not about what your position is titled. I was talking to a woman who was struggling with her business. I would go farther than that and say failing with her business. And she said, Phil, I don't know what to do. It was one of these. It was in a floral shop. It was a fruit basket business. And she said, I don't know what to do. And I said, okay, let me ask you a question. When you go to a party, when you talk to friends and stuff like that, and they say, so Francine, what do you do? She told me the answer she gives is, I own a fruit basket business. And I said, that's the problem. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, you see, you think of yourself as the owner of a fruit basket business. But you see, in order for you to actually step into this role of what you say you want to, you need to think of yourself as being a person who sells fruit baskets. She goes, I hadn't thought about that. So yeah, you're a salesman. You never really thought of yourself as a salesperson.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's
you're
like,
always
okay.
selling yourself.
So it's like being in a leadership role. If you're going to be in a retail environment or even in a professional environment, you have to be willing to be a salesperson too. And if you're going to own a business and hire people who are going to look to you for their future paycheck and maybe their career path, then you have to step into the role of leadership as well. And that means part of being a leader is to develop the followers. And if your employees are there saying, okay, what do I do now? And say, well, let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, we're not talking about doing, we're talking about accomplishing. And the doing is what we are required to happen, is required to happen in order for the accomplishment to occur. So then let's talk about the accomplishment, and then that'll tell us what we need to be doing. And so
that's also, well, that's part of the marketing. So expanding that on, what you have to get into your mind of being the business owner is you've got to think of a mission statement, why you're doing this, the purpose. And there are other things once you get into business that you've got to think of, not only the leadership, but you're constantly learning. So I think as the owner or boss, you have to enjoy learning and expanding. How do I do it better? And you have to be able to switch gears if it's not working properly. So you're not only learning yourself, you're looking at your teammates who are helping to make you successful and bringing them along with you. And I can remember getting into business, I didn't think of that stuff. All I thought of was, okay, I need someone who does accounting, because if I don't know the numbers, I'm not going to know when I'm profitable, which means I'm not going to know when to hire somebody. And it goes on and on. When do you buy more equipment, or when do you take the next bigger step? So there's so much learning involved, and I guess you would say personal growth in this, that not only for yourself, but it's also your business, because I don't care what business you're in, it's always evolving. It's always changing.
One
So
of the things,
leadership.
that you just touched on is that if you want your followership to individually grow or develop individually, I'm not talking about as a group, I'm talking about that person,
Yeah,
then you've heard the idea of leading by example. Well,
right.
there's some aspects to that people rarely think to touch on. And one of them is the very fact that I want you to do some training, learn some new things or whatever, but I never do, is that I don't show that I value it. I just want you to give me more of you for the money I'm giving to you. And so, but if I were to say, yeah, I'm taking courses too, I'm doing things too, I'm learning something new, I'm trying something different, then what you're doing is you're giving them the impression, and it's not a false impression, it's the true impression, that you value the idea of learning more and doing more and finding ways. I think it was Edward Deming who came up with the expression continuous improvement. The idea of, you've heard of total quality management, perhaps it's something a lot of companies touched on years ago. But the thing is, continuous improvement. It's not that I'm saying there's something wrong with today, but I'm saying that because, like you just said, Jenny, that things change, technologies change.
Oh, yeah.
The information base that we start with and move through is different every day. Nobody can know everything about anything. It's just too much to know. So the idea of, okay, what exactly is it that I'm working with today that might not be as useful to me tomorrow? And what is it that I don't even know about today that might be even more useful than what I know today in the future? And you can't know that. So what you do is you pursue avenues that allow that to accidentally wind up being in front of you. And then but you see, that's part of the look you're looking for. That's the difference between someone in the audience and someone on the stage, or the singer and the non-singer, is that you're saying, I'm singing, I want you to be a part of the chorus, and I'm going to do that from behind the microphone just like you. I have a different place, but I'm going to do that right beside you. It's like saying, okay, you're in an orchestra and you have first seat violin. Okay, you need all those others with you. Now, you might take first seat, but the thing of it is, without everybody else, it's just a note. So,
Bill, that's an interesting concept that you bring up, because a lot of times my upbringing was to figure it out myself, do it, go the road alone and just figure it out. Whether you need more schooling, whether you need more knowledge, reading, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And over time, I finally figured out that the more people that I bring in and the more people I connect with, they know stuff I don't know. And all I have to do is ask, but I was always afraid of asking that dumb question or looking stupid. And when I look back, I'm going, oh my goodness, I was stupid. I did not know that stuff, but I was so afraid of being perfect that I couldn't even get the question out. So therefore, I didn't really talk. It's funny how that is a catch-22.
Mm-hmm. Just to touch on what you just said too, the idea of asking questions. There's an old axiom that goes, there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Oh, they always say that, right?
Yeah, but you know what? That's just not so. Some of them are pretty freaking stupid.
Yeah, you get that evil eye. Oh my goodness, why don't you know that? What's wrong with you?
Oh, okay, and that's okay. Here's the thing. If you say, this might be a stupid question, if you're saying this to yourself, it's a stupid question, maybe, I don't know. And I'm going to look stupid by asking it. And maybe that'll be true. But my response to that Maybe it's because I'm a psychologist or whatever. I don't know. But my response is, so what? What difference does that make? You're trying to move forward. And if somebody else has an opinion of you, oh, what an idiot. It's like, okay, but I'm less of one now because I have an answer to a question I didn't know the answer to. And if that helps you to become better at something, what you do is you stand up to your, now this is not standing up to them. This is standing up to this. This is saying, my own image of myself is being challenged. I don't want to look stupid to whom? I don't want to look stupid to them, because then I would look stupid to me through their eyes. And I may have given you my definition of courage in the past, but I'll do it again. To me, courage is the ability to stand up to any strong emotion and still do the right thing anyway. So if it's fear, if it's embarrassment, if it's it can be enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is often thought of as a negative emotion, but if a person gets caught up in something and starts promising things they'll never deliver, if they start saying yes to stuff that they can't possibly fit into their schedule or afford or whatever, and then 3 days later they go, oh, gee, I'm afraid I'm going to have to, take that back. So whatever the strong emotion is, whatever it is, negative, positive, whatever you want to call it, if it interferes with what happens next, or it colors what you're thinking, then it takes something to stand up to that and say, let me give that some thought, or I'm going to ask this question, even if somebody might think I'm an idiot for asking it, because I know this, if I walk away and I don't know the answer to it, I'm going to think I was an idiot for not asking it, because I want to know the answer to that. So,
well, you're right. But this makes me think of, I'll use the example of an attorney. So there was an attorney who spoke so fast and used such crazy verbiage, and I thought it was me. And fortunately, it came out that that's okay. And because of that experience, it made me realize that until I'm comfortable, I have to keep looking for, how you look for employees to hire people. Well, you're also hiring someone to come in and do your landscaping. You're also hiring someone if you have your house built. It's the same with attorneys. And the idea never actually came together for me until that experience where I felt so intimidated that, oh my goodness, I should be understanding and writing down exactly what he's saying, and all these contempt and we do this, and as I said, the verbiage was so far out there because I was not educated in lawyer language that we ended up finding somebody else to help with the situation that we were in. And it was such a relief when I realized it wasn't me, it was how it was being explained to me. And because of that, when we went to do some landscaping, and that's why I brought in landscaping. So we had interviewed about 8 people, and I still wasn't comfortable with what I was hearing. And then number 13 came in and said, well, let me walk around your property, very cool, calm, and collected. He used layman's terms. And then he sat in his car and he said, I will write up a proposal for you right now. And here is what I will do. And here are the references when he came back after he came up with the pricing. And I said, wow, this guy's perfect. He's talking to me. He's relating to me. And then when we said, you're hired, and he came in day 1, he worked like crazy. I watched him. Day 2, it started to rain and it was cold, and I was watching him out the door, and I'm going, oh my goodness, it's freezing. Maybe I should offer him some coffee. And so I said, do you want some coffee? Are you sure you want to work in this rain? He said, ma'am, all I want to do is get the job done and get paid. And I go, that's my guy.
Uh-huh.
But you know, when you're younger, you're so intimidated that everybody knows more than you. And and so it's the same as what we're talking about. You feel intimidated about asking a question, that what you're going to say just proves how dumb you are. So
Yeah.
that's sharing my experience of feeling dumb.
Okay, let's convert that now to the concept of leadership too.
Yeah,
Um, there are a
good.
lot of
Thank
people.
you.
There are a lot of people who think the same way you just expressed, but they don't think they think that way. But what happens is when they are in a leadership position, they're afraid to say, "You need to stop doing that," or
Oh, oh
this
yeah.
isn't how it's done. This is off track.
Yes.
There is, in other words, if you're in, we're talking primarily here about entrepreneur, meaning that they own that business, but even entrepreneurs hire people to manage the business too. And so if I owned, as a matter of fact, one of the businesses that I owned, I had a manager. I used to tell people I've never hired a boss. I'm the boss. I own the place. So, you don't work for him, you work for me, but he is going to manage what you do for me. So, but it's really for you, because the better and the more successful you are, the better and more successful your career path is going to be as well. So that's how that
And
works.
that's letting go of ego.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing, is that not just my ego and having a manager, and I don't want to be the boss. I don't want anybody to be the boss. We're here to get a job done, and it's not about being a boss to me anyway.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is, when a person steps into that role, whether it's a manager, a supervisor, or the owner acting as a manager or supervisor, a leader of some sort, what it is that sometimes they will do is they will feel inadequate. They will feel less than the person that they're telling what to do. It's like, who am I to tell that person what to do? Now, they might not say it out loud, but some piece of them is thinking, this is a very accomplished person. He's working for me because he's good at what he does. And here it is, I'm telling him stuff. And it's like, so they're reluctant to do it. And this is where we had talked before about the idea that one of the greater leadership qualities is the willingness to lead. The singer sings, a willingness to stand in front of a microphone, so to speak. So for a leader to really be good at what they do, those things that person needs from me are required from me if I want to consider myself to be a leader. And if I want a successful entrepreneurial endeavor, part of that is going to be to make sure that I get the best out of the people who look to me for that leadership. That means I have to be willing. This is the courageous part of it, not brave. Running into a burning building, that's bravery. It could also be stupid, but it's bravery at the very least. Courage is standing up to the emotion that would stop you. If I know I can get in and out of that building and my emotion says, I don't want to do this, but I know that's what I need to do in order for me to carry out my mission here, then I run into the building. I mean, that's just all. But the thing is, bravery and courage aren't the same thing. I'm talking about the ability to stand up to these strong emotions. The idea of a person who might express it as being a form of imposter syndrome. It's like, everybody that's working around me knows more than I do about everything. But you said, but you know what? You had the money. You had the money to start all of this. And without you, not only that, you had the gall, the gumption, the audacity to put it at risk and start this thing because you had a vision and you had a dream. Well, so it's not about what I know. It's about what I do with what I know, and this entire big picture that you have that I didn't have, that puts you in charge and me following. So right. You say you stood up to the microphone and started singing today. And so it's like, okay, I might sing better than you, but you're doing it. And you're the choral director. And so whatever it is, it's my job to follow. And sometimes what you might do is say, you know what, you sing better than I do. So I'm going to step away and let you do it the solo. Because that's what it takes sometimes to do that too. And to have the courage of saying, you know, there might be some areas of my leadership role that are better done by somebody else. And I'm not going to worry about, you said ego, you know, I'm not going to worry about the egoistic aspect of it.
Yeah.
I'm going to step aside because it's not about that. It's not about the job. It's not about the role. It's not about the ego. It's about the outcome. It's about the accomplishment. It's about the why are we here? To use your expression from a little while ago, the mission.
Yeah. 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 Well, so let's look at it for the entrepreneur, the person who wants to get into their own business.
Mm-hmm.
And the question then is, because there is risk there, how do people take the next step to be the best leader, the best boss? So you have this idea of the business that you want to be an entrepreneur of, and you want to be successful, you want to be the best you can, and you do eventually want to have a team. So what is the best route? I've heard of Dale Carnegie, but is that the best route for someone to take to learn how to be a good leader? People are going to ask that question.
Okay, if you're asking what's the best way to develop your leadership skills, that's one question. If you're asking how do you put all of that together to start your business, what do you need to do and how do you make yourself do certain things, that's a different question. So let's start.
I love it. You are. I throw out all these questions and here you come up with two. Well, okay. So where do we go from here?
Okay, let's take the leadership development piece and put it over there because part of that answer is going to be in the other.
Okay.
One of the things that you said was, how do you take all your vision and all that kind of stuff and then move forward? There are a couple of things. Number one, I would say number one is, I don't give advice, but I would say this as an axiom: never fall in love with an idea. One of the great roads to failure is the idea of falling in love with an idea that won't pay. It's like, oh, it just seems such a great idea. Okay, well, that doesn't make it a good business. It just makes it a great idea. Some ideas pay and pan out, others don't. So that's, you have to be careful about that. So that's number one. Don't fall in love with an idea. But then the other one is, how do you live with decisions? How do you say, what if I fail? There's a very gripping scene in Macbeth where Macbeth is talking to his wife about killing the king. And he goes, what if we fail? And she goes, fail? Screw your courage to the sticking post and we shall not fail. Well, yeah, they did actually. So courage wasn't all there was to it. There's got to be something else. So the number one, in my opinion, once you have decided that this is going to be something you want to put your money at risk with, your time, your potential career path. You see, the thing is, you have opportunity cost. If I'm going to take myself out of that career path and start this business, I'm off my career path. I'm doing this as a new career path. So the thing is, that's an opportunity cost. So I have all these things. So what do I do? How do I live with what I'm doing? In my opinion, the number one thing to do is have a good decision-making process. You can live, most people anyway, can live with any outcome if they think they did their best. And oh well, sometimes things go awry. The best laid plans of mice and men do often go awry, so the saying goes. And that if I said, you know what, I did my due diligence, I did my this, I did my that, I talked to those and I saw these, and I made the best decision with what information I had at the time, and it went bust. I don't like it. I really don't, but I can live with it because I know I did my best. Well, how do you know? How do you know if you don't actually have some kind of a check the boxes kind of process? So you said, did I do my due diligence? Well, the question is, how do you measure that? What is your due diligence? What are you considering the things that you could have done, might have done, and ought to have done in order to be able to test your hypothesis, what would you say, virtually, before we actually put it into practice? So I think having a good decision-making process is a very important thing to start with, so that you can go down the checklist of things if you want to do that. As a decision-making coach, for example, people will ask me, should I do X or should I do Y? And I don't answer questions like that. But what I would do is I would say, okay, this idea of like, here's all the positives for doing it. Here's all the negatives for not doing it or doing it or whatever it is. Okay, that's part of it. But there's really a lot more to it than that. There is what I call, it's not my term, but what I use is the term decision matrix. There are many different things that you might want to consider, and some of them are more important than others of them. So making a list as though they were all equally important to you is not really true. Sometimes you can look at a decision on paper and you can say, if I did this, this would be the best thing I could do as far as money goes, but I would hate it. I would probably lose my mind doing it for 6 months, far less for the next 60 years or 6 years. So you see, obviously enjoying your work and other aspects of it have a higher weight than the money. So at some particular point, you want to know that you've covered your bases. So you look at what needs to be in my decision matrix. What criteria do I use in order for me to properly weight them? That is a very important thing. And I'll tell you what, if you go through that and you have a solid way of making a decision that when you walk away, you can say, it fits, it seems right, everything points that this is the best direction, or at least the preponderance of it points that this is the best direction. So when I make the decision to actually execute and it goes well, I can take pride in it went well. And if it goes afoul, I can take pride in having made a good decision and having the courage to execute it, to test it. And I think those are the two main things that a person would need.
I have a friend whom I interviewed who actually has basically a think tank group that gets together, depending on the size business you have, to actually think through that stuff. So once again, people have to realize they don't have to do it just themselves. There are ways to get other people's inputs without having it crammed down your throat of, where you hear from family, oh, you should do it this way, or friends saying, this is the best way. So if you want an open discussion about it, there are groups that do that sort of thing. And I think that's so important for people to realize, that the more you look into things, the more there are solutions to all sorts of problems that you may not have thought about.
And a lot of people might hear that and go, that sounds all well and good, but I mean, I don't know that I could do that. They are very closed-mouthed about what they're doing. They want to be very private about what they're doing. They have trade secret information or some kind of intellectual property involved, and so they don't want it in a group. And so, so you have people used to call themselves consultants. So you have consultancy, and you have, like me, a decision-making coach or whatever. You talk to somebody one-on-one that knows this particular assemblage of things to do in order to walk away with a sense that you've done all you can to make a good decision. So, I mean, I agree with you 100%. You don't have to do this all on your own. Fortunately, we have thousands of years of people making mistakes and successes along the way. And a lot of people have put a lot of stuff together that It's not just in the last 100 years, by the way. I mean, this has been going on forever. And
Well, that's the important thing for people to realize, that if you want it, there are different approaches. So, such as you say, you can help people with that decision making, and they can interview you. They can interview this other person. It's a matter of realizing, though, that you don't just take the first person that comes along. You need to spend the time to think, what makes me comfortable? Just the example I was talking about with the lawyer. I thought I had to take the first person, and partly because I closed down, and I thought, well, geez, I should know that terminology, but you have to step back and give yourself space and realize it's okay that you don't know everything. And I've always thought I had to know everything. I've thought I had to do everything. And finally, when I let go and start to say, I just don't understand that. Let me do some research on it. But it takes so long to reach that point.
Yeah. Now think, just building up what you just said. If you say, okay, I'm going to interview somebody, I'm going to interview a decision coach, I'm going to interview an attorney, I'm going to interview a landscapist. I don't even know if that's a real word, landscaper, maybe.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to interview them and say, okay, cool. What are you going to ask them? And it's like, I don't know. I never thought about that. To say, okay, so you see, the decision-making person that you're going to be talking to is going to help you make a good decision, but you have to make a decision about who that's going to be, which means you have to step back and you have to already make a decision here. So, before you do that, before you talk to an attorney or before you talk to anybody that's of a professional nature in particular, what you want to do is ask yourself, if what I'm trying to accomplish is talking to someone who really knows what they're doing, but is a good fit for the way I think and what's important to me, what would be required for me to hear and think about while talking to that person in order for me to think this is that person? So
well, I love that, Phil, but I will say, when you first start out with what I'm calling interview, it's just basically a discussion, what you know. You start to realize that the more people you talk to, the more you learn from them, and that raises more questions. And that's always been my problem of, well, what questions do I ask? I don't know. But as I start to dive in and they say something and I'm making my notes, all of a sudden I go, okay, well, the next person I talk to, I'm going to ask them these terminologies because I'm a little bit smarter than I was a couple minutes ago.
You see, and what goes on with that then is that you're hobbling the first person you talk to. So the idea is that if you talk to several people and you go, and I've been learning how to talk to people, and I've been learning more about their profession, and I now said, I wonder if I talk to the first person I spoke to begin with new and different ears, if they would pass muster.
Good point.
See, instead of
if
it being
you like
linear,
them, yeah. And a lot of times that's the gut feeling that people have. Well, number two, whom I was talking to, I kind of liked how they work. So I like your idea. Then you go back and rephrase your questions. So you don't have to close the door on anybody until you sign the contract.
There are probably some baseline things that you could always carry forward. For example, you might say, okay, I don't know a lot about how to interview a landscaper, or or a lawyer. Let's take the lawyer example that you introduced. So I do know this. I don't want to work with anybody that is non-responsive to me. So if I send a note or whatever, and they don't respond to me, or they put me on some kind of call to have me remember to do this or be there or do this or the other, but they don't respond to me. That's all I already know. I don't need to know much more about lawyering. I know that person is not a professional I want to deal with.
Right.
If they're going to be in constant sale mode, like the landscaper, I don't want to talk to somebody that's in constant sale mode. Even if I don't know anything about landscaping, I don't want to be sold. I want to be talked to. I want to be understood. I want someone to propose something that's going to fit my vision, even if they have to help me shape it. But I don't want to be sold continuously. So there are certain things. Well, here's another one. I want to talk to someone who is plain spoken. I want them to know a lot more than me. I just don't want someone who finds it necessary to constantly show me that they do, by using jargon, by using the nomenclature of their profession. I don't need that. What I need is someone to really understand. So that's another thing. You can say, look, if you're a pompous jerk, I don't need this. There are plenty of professionals out there that aren't. So I guess I got to keep looking. So there are some basic things, even if you're not out there as a proficient interviewer for certain kinds of professional services, you do know what you want from at least a substrate. At the very least, you want people who are responsive, who are respectful, who are using your language, not their language, someone who is trying to hear your vision instead of trying to superimpose theirs on you. There are things like that. So there are some basic things that you can start with, though. You're not completely so.
Right. Yeah. Well, I hope this gives the viewers some input. I know we wandered off, but we're kind of talking about, well, what does it take to be a boss and a leader? And then look at it from the perspective of, say, the person who's doing the hiring of that person. So I love all this interaction, Phil. This has been fabulous. Thank you. And I hope that everybody likes and comments and subscribe so that they can hear our next question to help entrepreneurs and get this country back into having many more entrepreneurs and small business owners. So thank you for today.
You're welcome. And if anybody wants to hear more about what it is I might be able to help them with, it's DAgostino.net. And they can come there, or they can drop me a note, and I'll be very glad to talk to them.
And comment below if you didn't get that, and I will be happy to get back to you.
Okay. All right, Jenny. Thank you too.